Hello, my dears. What a pleasure it is to see you all today. Let me just lower that a little bit more. Right. And so now begins another session of reading to you all stories of myth and legend of Irish descent. And I will say once again, please let me know if there are any issues with how I sound. And if you had missed the last streaming session of our book readings, I have already uploaded it onto my YouTube channel. There you will be able to find the corrected version. But without much further ado, we shall continue our readings in the Witches and Fairy Doctors section. Our first story for today is The Doctor and the Fairy Princess, attributed to Lady Wilde. Late one night, so the story goes, a great doctor who lived near Loughney was awoke by the sound of a carriage driving up to his door, followed by a loud ring. Hastily throwing on his clothes, the doctor ran down, when he saw a little sprite of a page standing at the carriage door, and a grand gentleman inside. "Oh, doctor, come, make haste, and come with me," exclaimed the gentleman. "Lose no time, for a great lady has been taken ill, and she will have no one to attend to her but you. So come along with me at once, and in the carriage." On this the doctor ran up again to finish his dressing, and to put up all that might be wanted, and was down again in a moment. "Now quick," said the gentleman, "you are an excellent good fellow. Sit down here beside me, and do not be alarmed at anything you may see." So they drove like mad, and when they came to the ferry, the doctor thought they would wake up the ferryman and take the boat. I apologize for my sister's cat, if you heard that crash. And when they came to the ferry, the doctor thought they would wake the ferryman and take the boat. But no, in they plunged, carriage and horses and all, and were at the other side in no time, without a drop of water touching them. Now the doctor began to suspect the company he was in, but he held his peace, and they went up to Shane's Hill till they stopped at a long, low, black house, which they entered and passed along a narrow, dark passage, groping their way, till, all at once, a bright light lit up the walls, and some attendants having opened a door, the doctor found himself in a glorious chamber, all hung with silk and gold, and on a silken couch lay a beautiful lady, who exclaimed with the most friendly greeting, "Oh, doctor, I am so glad to see you. How good of you to come." "Many thanks, my lady," said the doctor. "I am at your ladyship's service." And he stayed with her till a male child was born. But when he looked round, there was no nurse, so he wrapped it in swaddling clothes and laid it by the mother. "Now," said the lady, "mind what I tell you. They will try to put a spell on you to keep you here, but take my advice. Eat no food and drink no wine, and you will be safe. And mind also that you express no surprise at anything you see, and take no more than 5 golden guineas, though you may be offered 50 or 100 as your fee." "Thank you, madam," said the doctor. "I shall obey you in all these things." With this, the gentleman came into the room, grand and noble as a prince. And then he took up the child, looked at it, and laid it again on the bed. Now there was a large fire in the room, and the gentleman took the fire shovel and drew all the burning coal to the front, leaving a great space at the back of the gate. And then he took up that child again and laid it in the hollow at the back of the fire, and drew all the coal over till it was covered. But, mindful of the lady's advice, the doctor never said a word. Then the room suddenly changed to another, still more beautiful, where a grand feast was laid out, of all sorts of meats and fair fruits, and bright red wine, and cups of sparkling crystal. "Now, doctor," said the gentleman, "sit down with us, and take what best pleases you." "Sir," said the doctor, "I have made a vow neither to eat nor drink till I reach my home again, so please let me return without further delay." "Certainly," said the gentleman, "but first let me pay you for your trouble." And he laid down a bag of gold on the table, and poured out a quantity of bright pieces. "I shall only take what is my right, and no more," said the doctor, and he drew over 5 golden guineas, and placed them in his purse. "And now may I have the carriage to convey me back, for it is growing late." On this the gentleman laughed. "You have been learning secrets from my lady," he said. "However, you behaved right well, and you shall be brought back safely." So the carriage came, and the doctor took his cane, and was carried back as the first time through the water, horses, carriage, and all, and so on till he reached his home, all just right before daybreak. But when he opened his purse to take out the golden guineas, there he saw a splendid diamond ring along with them, and the purse worth a king's ransom. And when he examined it, he found 2 letters of his own name carved inside. So he knew it was meant for him, a present from the fairy prince himself. All this happened 100 years ago, but the ring still remains in the doctor's family, handed down from father to son, and it is remarked that whoever wears it as the owner for the time has good luck and honor and wealth all the days of his life. Our next story is a short one, also attributed to Lady Wilde, and this one is called The Fairy Doctoress. There was a woman of the islands, greatly feared, yet respected by the people for her knowledge of herbs, which gave her power over all diseases. But she never revealed the nature of the herb, and always gathered the leaves herself at night, and hid them under the eaves of the house. And if the person who carried the herb home let it fall to the ground by the way, it lost its power, or if they talked of it or showed it to anyone, all the virtue went out of it. It was to be used secretly and alone, and then the cure would be perfected without fail. One time, a man who was told of this came over from the mainland in a boat with 2 other men to see the fairy woman. For he was lame from a fall and could do no work. Yes, Lord Davros, I, for the most part, fixed the issues. If you were curious, it was actually connected to the noise suppression. So I had to find a happy medium between proper noise suppression and my voice coming through properly. Yes, it was very interesting. But it seems I'm not the only one such issues perchance happen upon. Now, where was I? For he was lame from a fall and could do no work. Now the woman knew they were coming, for she had a knowledge of all things through the power of divination she had learned from the fairies, and could see and hear, though no man told her. So she went out and prepared the herb, and made a salve and brewed a potion, and had all ready for the man and his friends. When they appeared, she stood at the door and cried, "Enter, this is the lucky day and hour. Have no fear, for you will be cured by the power that is in me, and by the herb I give you." Then the man bowed down before her and said, "O mother, this is my case." And as he told her that being out one day on the mountains, he slipped and fell on his face. A mere slight fall, but when he rose up his leg was powerless, though no bone seemed to be broken. "I know how this happened," she said. "You trod upon a fairy herb under which the fairies were resting, and you disturbed them and broke in the top of their dwelling. So they were angry and struck you on the leg and lamed you out of spite. But my power is greater than theirs. Do as I tell you, and you will soon be cured." So she gave him the salve and the bottle of potion, and bade him to take it home carefully and use it in silence and alone. And in 3 days the power of the limb would come back to him. Then the man offered her silver, but she refused. "I do not sell my knowledge," she said. "I give it. And so the strength and the power remain with me." On this the men went their way, but after 3 days a message came from the man to say that he was cured. And he sent the wise woman a handsome present also, for a gift works no evil, though to sell the sacred power and mysteries for knowledge for money would be fatal, for then the spirit of healing that dwelt in the woman would have fled away and returned no more. Our next story is attributed to Patrick Kennedy, and it is titled The Fairy Nurse. There was once a little farmer and his wife living near Coolgarrow. They had 3 children, and my story happened while the youngest was on the breast. The wife was a good wife enough, but her mind was all on her family and her farm, and she hardly ever went to her knees without falling asleep. And she thought the time spent in the chapel was twice as long as it needed to be. So, bygones, she let her man and her 2 children go before her one day to Mass, while she called to consult a ferryman about a disorder one of her cows had. She was late in the chapel, and was sorry all the day after, for her husband was in grief about it, and she was very fond of him. Late that night he was wakened up by the cries of his children calling out, "Mother, mother." When he sat up and rubbed his eyes, there was no wife by his side. And when he asked the little ones what was becoming of their mother, they said they saw the room full of nice little men and women, dressed in white and red and green, and their mother was in the middle of them, going out by the door as if she was walking in her sleep. Out he ran and searched everywhere round the house, but neither tale nor tidings did he get of her for many a day. Well, the poor man was miserable enough, for he was fond of his woman as she was of him. It used to bring the salt tears down his cheeks to see his poor children neglected and dirty, as they often were, and they'd be bad enough only for a kind neighbor that used to look in whenever she could spare the time. The infant was out with a wet nurse, and my sister's cat is causing more issues. Milo, go on. Go. About 6 weeks after, just as he was going out to his work one morning, a neighbor that used to mind women at their laying in came up to him and kept step by step with him to the field, and this is what she told him. You're very correct, Lord Davros. My cat's no better, but he is new to this. Just as I was falling asleep last night, I hears a horse's tramp in the brawn, and a knock at the door, and there, when I came out, was a fine-looking man, dark, mounted on a black horse, and he told me to get ready in all haste, for a lady was in great want of me. As soon as I put on my cloak and things, he took me by the hand, and I was sitting behind him before I felt myself stirring. "Where are we going, sir?" says I. "You'll soon know," says he, and he drew his fingers across my eyes, and not a stim remained in them. I kept a tight grip on him, and the dickens I knew whether he was going backwards or forwards, or how long we were about it, till my hand was taken again, and I felt the ground under me. The fingers went the other way across my eyes, and there we were before a castle door. And in we went through the big hall and great rooms, all painted in fine green colors, with red and gold bands and ornaments, and the finest carpets and chairs and tables and window curtains, and fine ladies and gentlemen walking about. At last we came to a bedroom with a beautiful lady in bed, and there he left me with her, And, bedad, it was not long till a fine, bouncing boy came into our world. The lady clapped her hands, and in came FaeWorks, or the dark man, and kissed her and his son, and praised me, and gave me a bottle of green ointment to rub the child all over. Well, the child I rubbed, sure enough, but my right eye began to smart me, and I put up my finger and gave it a rub, and pursuing to me if ever I was so frightened. The beautiful room was a big rough cave, with water oozing over the edges of the stones and through the clay, and the lady and the lord and the child, weazened, poverty-bitten creatures, nothing but skin and bone, and the rich dresses were old rags. I didn't let on that I found any difference, and after a bit says the dark man, "Go before me to the hall door. I will be with you in a few moments to see you safely home." Well, just as I turned into the outside cave, who should I see watching near the door but poor Molly. She looked round all frightened, and she says to me in a whisper, "I'm brought here to give suck to the child of the king and queen of the fairies, but there is one chance of saving me. All the court will pass the cross near Temple Shambo next Friday night, on a visit to the fairies of the old Ross. If John can catch me by hand or cloak when I ride by, and has courage not to let go of his grip, I'll be safe. Here's the king. Don't open your mouth to answer. I saw what happened with the ointment." Thank you, Game Crazy, for popping by. FaeWorks, or the dark man, didn't once cast his eye towards Molly, and he seemed to have no suspicion of me. When we came out, I looked about me, and where do you think we were but in the dyke of the Rath of Corn? I was on the horse again, which was nothing but a big ragweed, and I was in dread every minute I'd fall off, but nothing happened till I found myself in my own barn. The king slipped 5 guineas into my hand as soon as I was on the ground, and thanked me and bade me good night. I hope I'll never see his face again. I got into bed and couldn't sleep for a long time, and when I explained my 5 guineas in the morning, that I left in the table drawer the last thing, I found 5 withered leaves of oak, but bad scran to the giver. Well, you may think all the fright and the joy and the grief the poor man was in when the woman finished her story. They talked and they talked, but we needn't mind what was said till Friday night came, when both were standing where the mountain road crosses the one going to Ross. There they stood looking towards the bridge of Thar, and I won't keep you waiting, as they were in the dead of night, with a little moonlight shining from over Kilkmarid. At last she gave a start, and by this and that, says she, here they come, bridles jingling and feathers tossing. He looked, but he could see nothing, and she stood trembling, and her eyes wide open, looking down the way to the ford. I see your wife, said she, riding on the outside just so as to rub against us. We'll walk on, premises-like, and if we suspect nothing, and when we are passing, I'll give you a shove. If you don't do your duty then, Dickens cure you. Well, they walked on easy, and the poor hearts beating in both their breasts. And though he could see nothing, he heard a faint jingle, and tramping and rustling, and at last he got the push she promised. He spread out his arms, and there was his wife's waist within them, and he could see her plain. But such a hullabaloo rose, as if there was an earthquake, and he found himself surrounded by horrible-looking things, roaring at him and striving to pull his wife away. But he made the sign of the cross and bid them be gone in God's name, and held his wife as if it was iron his arms were made of. But Dad, in one moment everything was as silent as the grave, and the poor woman lying in a faint in the arms of her husband and her good neighbor. Well, all in good time, she was minding her family and her business again. And I'll go bail, after the fright she got, she spent more time on her knees, and avoided ferrymen all the days of the week, and particularly Sunday. It is hard to have anything to do with the good people without getting a mark from them. The brave midwife didn't escape no more nor another. She was one Thursday at the market of Einscory, when what did she see walking among the tubs of butter but the dark man, very hungry looking, and taking a scoop out of one tub out of another. Oh, sir, says she, very foolish, I hope your lady is well, and the young heir. Pretty well, thank you, he says, rather frightened like. How do I look in this new suit? Says he, getting to one side of her. I can't see you plain at all, sir, says she. Well now, says he, getting round her back and to the other side. Musha, indeed, sir, your coat looks no better nor a withered dock leaf. Well then, says he, it will be different now, and he struck the eye next him with a switch. Begone, she never saw a sting after with that one, till the day after her death. Our next story is attributed to Lady Wilde, and it is called The Wicked Widow. The evil spells over milk and butter are generally practiced by women, and arise from some feeling of malice or envy against a prosperous neighbor. But the spell will not work unless some portion of the milk is first given by consent. The people, therefore, are very reluctant to give away milk, unless for some friend that they could not suspect of evil. Tramps coming in to beg for a mug of milk should always be avoided, for they may be witches in disguise. And even if milk is given, it must be drunk in the house and not carried out of it. In every case, the person who enters must give a hand to the churn and say, "God bless all here." A young farmer, one of the fine, handsome fellows of the West, named Hugh Connor, was also very well off and rich, took a wife to a pretty young girl of the village called Mary, one of the Ladons, and there was no better girl in all the country round, and they were very comfortable and happy together. But Hugh Connor had been keeping company before his marriage with a young widow of the place, who had designs on him, and was filled with rage when Mary Ludden was selected for Connor's bride in place of herself. Then a desire for vengeance rose up in her heart, and she laid her plans accordingly. First, she got a fairy woman to teach her some witch secrets and spells, and then by great pretense of love and affection for Mary Connor, she got frequent admission to the house, soothing and flattering the young wife, and on churning days she would especially make it a point to come in and offer a helping hand. And if the cakes were on the griddle, she would sit down to watch and turn them. But it so happened that always on these days the cakes sure to be burnt and spoiled, and the butter would not rise in the churn, or if any did come, it was sour and bad, and of no use for the market. But still the widow kept on visiting, and soothing and flattering, till Mary Connor thought she was the very best friend to her in the whole wide world. Though it was true that whenever the widow came to the house, something evil happened. The best dish fell down of itself off the dresser and broke, or the rain got in through the roof, and Mary's new cashmere gown, a present that had come to her all the way from Dublin, was quite ruined and spoiled, But worse came, for the cow sickened, and a fine young brood of turkeys walked straight into the lake and drowned. And still worse of all, the picture of the Blessed Virgin Mother that was pinned up to the wall fell down one day and was blown into the fire and burned. Thank you for the lurk, Lord Davros. After this, what luck could be on the house? And Mary's heart sank within her, and she fairly broke down, and cried her very life out in torrents of tears. Now, it so happened that an old woman with a blue cloak and a hood of it over her head, a stranger, was passing by at the time, and she stepped in and asked kindly Mary what ailed her. So Mary told her all her misfortunes, and how everything in the house seemed to be bewitched with evil. Now, said the stranger, I see it all, for I am wise, and know the mysteries. Someone with the evil eye comes to your house. We must find out who it is. Then Mary told her of the nearest friend she had was the widow, but she was so sweet and kind, no one would suspect her of harm. We'll see, said the stranger. Only do as I bid you, and have everything ready when she comes. She will be here soon, said Mary, for it is churning day, and she always comes to help exactly at noon. Then I'll begin at once. Now close the door fast, said the stranger, and with that she threw some herbs on the fire, so that a great smoke arose. Then she took all the plough irons that were about, and one of them she drove into the ground close beside the churn, and put a live coal beside it, and the other iron she heated red hot in the fire, and still threw on more herbs to make a thick smoke, and Mary thought it smelt like the incense in a church. Then with the red hot rod from the fire, the strange woman made the sign of the cross on the threshold, and another on the hearth, after which a loud roaring was heard outside, and the widow rushed in crying out that a hot stick was running through her heart, and all her body was on fire. And then she dropped down to the floor in a fit, and her face became quite black, and her limbs worked in convulsions. Now, said the stranger, you see who it is put the evil eye on your house. But the spell has been broken at least. Send for the men to carry her back to her own house, and never let that witch woman cross your threshold again. Now, after this, the stranger disappeared and was seen no more in the village. Now, when all the neighbors heard the story, they would have no dealings with the widow. She was shunned and hated, and no respectable person would be seen talking to her, and she went by the name of the evil witch. So her life was very miserable, and not long after she died of sheer vexation and spite, all by herself alone, for no one would go near her, and the night of the wake no one went to offer a prayer, for they said that the devil would be there in person to look after his own. And no one would walk with her coffin to the grave, for they said that the devil would be waiting at the churchyard gate for her. And they firmly believe to this day that her body was carried away on the night from the graveyard by the powers of darkness. But no one ventured to test the truth of this story by opening the coffin, so the weird legend remains still unsolved. But as for Hugh Connor and the pretty Mary, they prospered after that in all things, and good luck and the blessings of God seemed to be evermore on them and their home, and their cattle, and their house, and their children. At the same time, Mary never omitted on churning days to put a red-hot horseshoe under the churn, according as the stranger had told her, who she firmly believed was a good fairy in disguise, who came to help her in the time of her sore trouble and anxiety. Our next story, and potentially the last one for our reading hour, is The Bewitched Urn. The Bewitched Churn, pardon me. Attributed to Patrick Kennedy. Near the townsland of Scarwash, there lived an old woman in bad repute with her neighbors. She was seen one May Eve skimming a well that lay in a neighboring farm, and when that was done, she went into the adjoining meadow and skimmed the dew off the grass. One person said he heard her muttering, "Come all to me, and none to he." In a day or two, the owner of the farm, coming in from the fields about noon, found the family still at their churn and no sign of butter. He was a little frightened, and looked here and there, and at last spied a bit of stale butter fastened to the mantel-beam of the open fireplace. "Oh, you may as well stop," said he. "Look what's there." "Oh, the witch's butter," said one of the girls. "Cut it off the mantelpiece." "No use," said another. "It must be a charmed knife or nothing." Go and consult the ferryman in the old mining house at. If he doesn't advise you, nobody can." The master of the house took this advice, and when they had milk enough for another churning, this is what they did. They twisted twigs of the mountain ash round their cows' necks. They made a big fire and thrust into it the sock and coulter of the plough. They fastened the ash twigs round the churn and connected them to the chain of the plough irons. Shut door and windows so that they could not be opened from without, and merrily began the churning. Just as the plough irons were becoming hot, someone tried the latch of the door, and immediately they saw the face of the witch outside the window. "What do you want, good woman?" "The seed of the fire. I want to help you at the churning. I heard what happened to you, and I'm rather lucky." Here she roared out, for the burning plough irons were scorching her inside. "What ails you, poor woman?" "Oh, I have a terrible colic. Let me in to the fire for mercy's sake, and give me a warm drink." "Oh, Musha, but it's ourselves are sorry for you. But we could not open door nor window now for Saint Mogue himself, for 'fraid the witch would come in and cut our quicken gads, or pull out the plough irons, or even touch the churn staff." She got a bit of butter out of the fresh churning the other day, and took a sod out of our fire, and till she brings back the butter and the sod, we must labor away. Have patience, poor woman. When we see a sign of the butter, we'll open the door for you, and give you such a warm tumbler of punch, with caraways in it, as would bring you back from death's door. Put more turf on, and keep the irons at a red heat." Another roar ensued, and then she ejaculated, "Oh, pursuing to all hard-hearted neighbors that would see a fellow creature dying in misery outside of their door. Sure, I was coming to yours with relief, and this is the sort of relief you'd give. Throw up the window a bit, and take those things I made out of yours. Throw a bit of butter you'll find in this sheet of white paper into the churn, and turn this sod of turf into the fire, and cut away the bit of butter on the mantel beam with this knife, and give it back to me, till I return it to the knowledgeable woman I begged it from for yours." The direction being followed, the butter began to appear in heaps in the churn. There was great joy and huzzahing, and they even opened the door to show hospitality to the old rogue. But she departed in a rage, giving them her blessings in these words: "I won't take bite nor sup from you. You have treated me like a Hosan or a Cromwellin, and not like an honest neighbor. And so I leave my curse and the curse of Cromwell on you all. And with that, my dears, our reading hour is now up. I thank you all so much for joining me today. It truly means the world when you show up. So, until next time, I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your days. And please, do be mindful of the stories of which I tell, and take lessons where need be, and questionable objections when others are needed. But until next time, my dears, I hope to see you again soon. Ta-ta and farewell. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you like what you saw here, I ask that you leave a like, comment, subscribe, and until we next meet, my dears, I do hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And until then, ta-ta and farewell.